just to hear your words come tumbling out, and it's then we undo.
Okay, well, good afternoon and welcome to the next episode of the Digital Diaries. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Mr. Alan McHardy, who's a teacher at Bridgend Primary School. Before I introduce Alan, just a quick disclaimer. Alan's actually taught two of my own children, so I already have a vested interest. So in true MP style, I'll make my declaration at the start. Welcome, Alan.
Hello, hi Robert, nice to be here.
Yeah, no, not at all. Thank you for joining us. And as people have kind of hopefully begun to realise, this is a chance for an informal chat with some of the people who are leading the way in terms of digital development across Highland. So, first question, nice and easy, really, is just, can you just maybe introduce yourself? Tell us about your kind of, I suppose, your recent teaching history and how you've got to the point where you are just now.
Yep, so I'm Alan McHardy, class teacher at Bridgend Primary School in Alness. I've been there for about 7 years now. So, and I've been kind of predominantly up the school in primary 6 and 7. So most recently I've been in teaching primary 6, 7, which has been great. And I suppose that's kind of led me to being where I am today, to be honest, because obviously with the one-to-one device rollout with the 6s and 7s, I've kind of been able to take a bit of a lead with, helping out with the Chromebooks in the school and being part of your e-safety group from a few years ago. And I mean, at Bridgend, I was really lucky that we bought in 10 Chromebooks really early on. I mean, I think about 4 or 5 years ago now, when we first heard that this was coming, that we brought in 10 just to experiment with. So I've kind of just learned from there. So it's been really good in that respect.
Excellent. Okay, yeah, of course, I forgot about my early e-safety groups. That's a blast from the past there.
Yeah.
In terms of your digital knowledge, obviously people will learn in different ways. Some people have done formal training, some people are self-taught. Maybe just give us a kind of overview of what you've done. How have you learned the digital skills? And have you done any kind of accreditation or certification?
Yeah, I mean, I think from my point of view, I've always been quite interested in technology and computers, and I would never say that I'm an expert, because there's so much to learn, and it's a constantly evolving picture. And I'm still working on it. There's every day there's something that I think I didn't know that, or I'm going to try and work on that a bit better. I think if I was to suggest anything to anybody, it would be to, I think, spending quite a bit of time looking at stuff online, particularly you get some useful stuff on Twitter. There's suggestions for teaching from people all over the world on that. And I think also, I mean, I was lucky that I got to go to I've been to a couple of the Google boot camps in the past. And I actually sometimes think experimenting with stuff with the kids. I mean, a few occasions I've been told about an app or some sort of thing that's worked in the classroom, and I've just thrown it out to the kids, asked them to fiddle with it. And often I've learned a lot from them, just from asking them to give it a go. So that's been, and I think the other way to develop my expertise has been just to experiment with it and not be scared just to try it. Definitely. I mean, my kind of accreditation at the moment, I mean, I've been working through some of the Google stuff. So I'm up to level 2 at the moment for Google Educator. So we'll see if I can take that any further. But I mean, that's just been really good from a CPD point of view, and also checking myself that I know what I'm doing, to be honest.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, if somebody was listening to this or watching this thinking, I have nowhere near enough knowledge to be able to do any of the Google certification, maybe talk them through, I mean, how much knowledge do you think you need to have before you could try level 1?
I think if you've got a good understanding of all of the kind of G Suite applications, particularly, I think it's like the Google Sheets and Docs and Calendar. And, it's quite basic kind of admin-y kind of stuff I felt that was in the level 1 stuff. I would give it a go. And certainly if you look through some of the training materials on the Teacher Education Center for Google, I mean, that's really helpful. And I think a lot of people would be quite surprised about how much they can actually manage. I think they would get a lot more done than they realize.
You do realise that if you say the word Google Sheets one more time, you get kicked off this interview. It's like a two-strike rule.
Yeah, that's definitely something I need to work on. It's something I'm a bit scared of when somebody comes and asks me, because I don't know enough yet about that. So I'm like I'm saying, it's still always learning. It's just I have an interest in it. So,
And if I was to walk into your classroom, this is a real head teacher speak there. What kind of digital stuff? And this is obviously thinking pre-lockdown, but what would a digital classroom that you were leading within look like?
I think I've always been of one of the kind of, I think anyone that's come and spoken to me about it has been that you've got to get the balance, because yes, we have a duty to use this stuff, and yes, you need to upskill the children, and they've got to provide the opportunity for them to be able to use all of this stuff, because it's going to be part and parcel of their job. I mean, if you look now where we are right now, you have to know how to use this sort of stuff. And I think I've always tried to make it that the ICT part of it is not maybe the central bit most of the time. It's sometimes just like almost it's just a kind of additional part to it. It's helping make things a bit easier. So, for example, if we're doing some maths in my class, instead of and occasionally when you're in primary 6 and 7, there are times where they do just have to sit and do jotter stuff, and I try and either change that if they're using their Chromebook, even just to view the page on their Chromebook, it's sometimes much easier for them. They much prefer using that, or they're completing their work on their Chromebook. But also there are other opportunities where it is very much that the classroom is, it's the lesson is ICT and Chromebook central based, and we're trying to use stuff, like things like Google Slides to collaborate together. I try and make it a tool for that as much as possible, so you're bringing everyone together. So I try to get a real mix, to be honest. And like I said, I think you've got to hit the balance, really. So I do just try and do that as much as possible.
Perfect. No, that's a great answer. And some, this is the whole point of this chat, is that people are picking up, ideas as to how to get started.
Yeah.
In terms of innovation, I've not actually asked this question so far in the interviews, but where do you stand on the kind of, I suppose, a spectrum of innovation versus, and you've kind of alluded to it already, innovation versus the kind of core purpose of being in the classroom for learning and teaching? Because I think the extreme would be that you simply hear about something, an app or an approach, and you just try it for the sake of trying it, beyond just experimenting. But, how do you kind of balance up what you're saying, finding something or hearing about it, reading about it on Twitter, and then thinking, how can I actually use that in my own classroom?
I think, because there is the danger. I mean, I would say you experiment with stuff, but like, I think sometimes the best things when you're experimenting, you've got to have some sort of purpose in behind it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think if I'm trying to experiment, I mean, there will be times where I will just, if there's spare time in the day, which is not very often, but if we've got like a dedicated ICT time, I will just throw something out to them and say, have a fiddle. But yeah, I think for the best bits to work, you've got to try and link it into to give them some sort of purpose with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, completely.
Yeah.
And in terms of innovation, what is your go-to? If someone said to you, I hear you're a bit of a digital guru, show me something that would convince me, that digital learning is a good way of doing things. Is there anything that you would go to? I don't know if you want to share anything with us. You're welcome to show anything that you think would be great to see.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I kind of, I tend to stick to some of the kind of core stuff really, with Google, because I think some of the Google stuff like Classroom and even the slides and docs, it's so powerful if you use it in a specific way. So, I mean, obviously, I've done quite a bit of the training with Google Classroom and slides recently, which is all recorded on the Highlands DigiHub. But I think if I was trying to say, obviously Classroom's a big thing for me. I spend a lot of time with that and getting the kids submitting their work, and like we've been trying to sell it, it's an organizational tool.
Yeah.
But I also really like the way that some of the G Suite apps can encourage a lot of collaboration between the kids. So, my classes absolutely love having one document where they're all feeding into one thing, or they're all going off and researching something in separate and they're all feeding it back, and they've got like that end product that, they've all worked on, but it's on one space. And I think that's quite difficult to replicate. It'd be quite tricky to do that in any other sense. So, I mean, I don't know if I would subscribe to anything particular. I like to try and think that I cover a lot of the bases. I mean, I really like the use of Padlet. I know you're quite a big fan of that, Robert. I
Yep.
use that quite a lot. But yeah, I think I try to get a broad sense, really. I don't know if I could actually pinpoint one thing I'd be.
I mean, I was going to suggest maybe if you wanted to, I could pull up the Digital Schools Hub, and maybe you could even just talk a little bit about the training that's already up there. Because I think that's something that people hear about, this mythical digital hub, but perhaps don't necessarily know what to do. You know, I have heard someone saying to me today, actually, that they been onto the digital hub and they found that there was so much on there that they actually weren't really sure, where to look. So, I mean, in terms of what you've contributed already, you've got this one here, which is Introduction to Google Classroom. And what would you typically cover in one of these? I think you're up here twice, actually, but what would you cover in one of these sessions that are recorded? In fact, 3 times. What would you cover in one of these sessions?
I basically I've been trying to do those ones there that are for Google Classroom are specifically for like beginning, and what like I was trying to get the message across was to try and get people off the ground, because I think at that point when those were recorded, it was very early days for us. So I was literally just trying to show how to get started. So it was setting up a classroom, putting on assignments, and being able to encourage children to join the class through using the classroom code. It was also within the assignments, it was including documents, including YouTube videos, and also just navigating your way around the stream and the classwork part. And I think we're very lucky in Highland at the moment. We're in a very kind of fortuitous position, strangely, considering the circumstances, that there's all this training out there that's being created by so many different people. And it's a good opportunity to engage with it. And, you know, I've really enjoyed doing it. And I hope it's been really, really helpful. Like this hopefully will be helpful to others to hear what, could be helpful to them as they move forward.
But I think, and I think you're right. And I think, the purpose of this is not really to sort of sit here and give you, endless amounts of praise. But I think the fact that you've managed to do, I think you're almost becoming renowned as the sort of go-to person for training for people who are, perhaps at the very start of the digital journey. I think due to your patience and the fact that you can actually, really sort of take people along with you. How did you find, you did a session for PSAs on, I think it was Google Classroom with 170. How did you, how on the surface of it, how do you cope with having 170 people in a training session?
Well, as I say, at the time, I'm not sure I was totally aware there was actually that number of people on. I think I find it really quite strange doing it, because obviously I'm quite used to doing one-to-one training, or training like in a room with a group of people. And, obviously when you're doing that, you can gauge very quickly like how the audience is going. So you can look around the faces. If there's complete bewilderment and confusion, then I need to take a wee step back here. But I think with that, I took it from the perspective. I mean, I'd spoken to some of the PSAs at Bridgend, and I'd spoken to other staff before I did it, and thought, well, look, what would be useful here? And I think the feedback I got was, just take it from the very start. And I think that's hopefully what, if people watch that, they'll find it helpful. That it's just like building blocks. You just take it at your own pace, and it's you just, like I said, I've learned a lot from just fiddling and just having a bit of experimentation with it and seeing how it works. And hopefully I've been able to, on that training, just give people that little push that they need to get started, at least. Hopefully that's been the case.
Well, I would definitely say so. And if you are watching this thinking, where do I start? Then I think any of Alan's beginner sessions to Classroom, even Google Slides would be a really great place to start. In terms of the sort of lockdown and COVID, how would you describe the change that's happened in the past 8 or 9 weeks, whether that be in a school level or, across authority? What differences do you think digital learning, or where do you think digital learning has changed from where we were?
I think it's changed hugely. I mean, if I take the perspective from our own school at Bridgend, I mean, like I said, there was lots of us there that were quite up for we were into the technology stuff. I think it's really, really pushed a lot of people out of their comfort zone. And I think now, if you asked a lot of them now, they'd be quite pleased probably where they've come in the last 8 weeks. And I think hopefully when we return, I think obviously, when things change, when we go back in August, it's going to be a very different school picture we go to. And there's going to be that sense that there's going to be this blend between the technology and the sort of normal kind of classroom setup. I think that's probably going to be a change that's going to last for quite some time now, I would hope. I think hopefully people have seen the value a little bit more of how useful this stuff can be and how straightforward it is. And it doesn't have to be fancy and complicated. And sometimes the simplest things are the best, actually. It's the things the kids enjoy the most. So yeah, I think it will have made a huge impact. And it certainly has over the last 8 weeks. It's just been a massive shift to what we're used to.
Yeah. And in terms of between now, people are starting to think almost in two different stages, between now and the summer and then between now and August. What's your kind of digital aim for between now and the summer, maybe professionally or personally? What's your sort of target that you still want to achieve?
I think we've got a good basis now from a personal perspective, and it's probably as a school perspective. I think we've got a really good basis at the moment of working. I suppose you'd be continuing to find other ways and to get engaged with the learning and sort of just different ways of using the G Suite stuff, just to mix it up a little bit, because like I've said, we've been trying to keep things as simple as possible, but maybe there's opportunity there to maybe now there's time just to maybe push it on a little bit further, perhaps. But that takes time, because obviously you have to be very aware of staff confidence and workload as well. I mean, it's huge. So, on my perspective, I would just like to keep supporting people in the way, hopefully, that I have been, and just to keep with that, because hopefully it's been helpful.
Well, absolutely, 100%. Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's still quite a few weeks left. And I think, the more we get closer to the summer, I think potentially the more important it is that we have got these basic skills. And I know, obviously, you're working with me on this essential skills level 1 training, which could be huge. And if you're hearing that for the first time, this essential skills training is basically going to be a package of training across 3 levels, and level 1 being very much for people either who don't have the skills or knowledge, or most likely don't have the confidence to actually go ahead and use them. So Alan and myself, but Alan particularly, will be leading on this and putting this package together. So that's something that sounds interesting to you. Obviously, you can watch this space as well.
Yeah.
My final question, you've kind of alluded to it a little bit already, is, and I always ask this question, if someone came up to you and said, I just don't get this digital thing, or I just don't want to do it, I don't feel confident, what would you say to reassure them? If you had to give them a sentence or two in terms of reassurance, what would you say?
I think, first of all, I've often found the most effective thing has actually been to demonstrate something as a selling point. And, certainly I think what's improved, from my experience, is sometimes if I've had somebody say, no, I can't understand this, how's this going to work? The thing that is, I think, is the biggest teller is when you go in, demonstrate it, you let them see how it works. And I think that maybe could help a lot. If I was to say to somebody, I would say stick with it. I mean, I think there's a big fear that if you do something in here, you're going to make a huge mess. It's actually, I think, and something I have said quite a lot, is it's quite hard to make a really big mess of something on here. And there's always the delete button, usually, in most of the cases. So yeah, I think it's just experiment and just stick with it. I think it would be my advice, really.
Or there's always the IT crowd mentality of just turn it off and on again.
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
That's quite a useful piece of advice, actually, now and again, and it does sometimes work.
I was going to say, it's amazing how often it does work. Well, thank you, Alan. That's hopefully been of interest, and it's been really good to get a chance to speak to you. And I think this is almost as much about showcasing people like yourself and Taus that we've interviewed so far, just in terms of the work that you've done, because I think, the dangers we take it for granted, but, you're also balancing teaching a class and also, as you said, supporting the staff at Bridgend. So it's definitely much appreciated. And it's been great just to get the chance to speak to you sort of more informally about digital learning. So thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, not at all. Thank you very much.
Not at all. And hopefully you've enjoyed that. And we will hopefully see you all again the next time on the Digital Diaries.